Hi, this is Suhaila, and this is Grow With Me by Suhaila, the podcast. And this is season 2, episode 3. And the name of this episode is Arguing for Your Limitations. Stop arguing for your limitations. Let's get into it. So I wanted to talk about something that has been coming up for me over and over and over the past few weeks and months. I see this in outside people and myself as well. I see it in conversations I have, and I had to sit with it because I couldn't identify what it was, or I didn't even know what it was called. So normally my podcast is super intuitive, and this is too, but I couldn't nail it. Like, I didn't know how to talk about this. So I had to do a little research with this one to get the right language to simplify it. But before I get into it, I just wanted to just really clarify that this is not a political conversation. This episode is about mindset. It's about internal behavior, self-awareness, mindset. It's not about systems. It's not about dismissing anything that's real when it comes to people who are truly disadvantaged, who have real barriers, real, inequities, because those really exist in the world. So systemic issues are real. Privilege is a real thing. But these are entirely separate and different conversations. They're important, but they're separate than what I'm talking about here. What I'm speaking about today is the story we tell within our own lane, within our own circumstances, within our own lives, and current capabilities among people who are largely operating on a similar playing field. I don't mean the disparities between the very, very rich and the people who are not. So let's take that out of conversation. It's not politics. This is not capitalism. This is nothing like that. Again, what I'm talking about is people who we have enough of something. We have something to work with. And we're still looking sideways at what someone else might have instead of looking within at what is already in our own hands. And this is an inside job conversation, not a political one, not an outside job. So if systematic change happens to be your work, then keep doing it. But this episode is not for that. It's not for that moment. This episode is for the quiet conversations we have with ourselves. And one of the things I noticed in myself and in other people, there are 3 things. And this is the thing I had to research a little because they felt like one thing, but I knew they were different. And I wanted to name them properly so that I could attribute each to what I'm talking about. But overall, it's when we use our circumstances as our identity. When our circumstances truly become our identity, both as an excuse and also like as a badge. And neither one of them are fully honest, even if they might be true, meaning they're not lies, but they're just not honest and they're not the truth of who we really are. So the first one is scarcity mindset. The second one is attribution error. And the third one is a martyr complex. The first one, scarcity mindset, is I don't have what I need to do the thing. I don't have what I need to do this thing. The second one, attribution error, that's the one I didn't have a word for that, a term for that. It's a research to describe what I was talking about so I could have a word to sum it up. Attribution error. This is looking at other people and thinking they can do it because of what they have, not because of who they are. And when I say who they are, I'm not talking about a title. I'm not talking about a title, whether it's a business title or a family title. Parent, mother, wife, husband, VP, CEO, receptionist, customer service. I'm not talking about who they are in that way. I'm talking about who they are on the inside. And then the third one is martyr complex. I did this with so little, and look at what I've overcome. And I notice it a lot in people, and I think we have to really stop doing this. I think that because I have sat at so many tables, I've said this in other episodes, particularly in season 1, where I touched on business a bit. I've worked across industries. I have worked in the music industry with artists and record label executives and been on tours. I have worked as a marketing person. I have worked in advertising, running L'Oreal Cosmetics. I have sat across the table in small meetings, 10 people, with the president of these companies. These companies employ tens of thousands of people around the world. I have sat across from founders, tech founders, startup founders who have raised hundreds of millions of dollars, for instance, in AI. I have sat across from people who own barbershops. I have people who are neighbors who come to me as friends and also for advice. 30-year-old people, new moms who are trying to start their TikTok. I have, I talk to people in my local grocery store or CVS, and just people on a personal and professional level. I have been in TV and film. I have sat and run companies or worked on brands that sit on the stock exchange. People who bootstrap their own companies and start something beautiful or wonderful. I have seen so many people from so many walks of life, and I can tell you, we have exactly what we need. It's like life is a toolbox. We are given the toolbox at the start of our life that we're going to need. Just like any other real toolbox, whether you are someone who likes to play and fix with cars. I have a friend who he likes to have, what do they call, antique cars, and that's his hobby. He fixes them up. He always needs new tools depending on the year of the car. And, so same thing with the house. If I'm someone who had an apartment, then I have a certain toolbox. I'm likely not having to make a lot of repairs. Maybe there's a maintenance worker or a super in your building or your complex. If I then get a house that I own, and now I have a garage and a washer and dryer that I didn't have before, or an outdoor grill, you might need to add more tools to that toolbox, right? Or if I change the tires on my car, I now have a different car, different tires. I now need to add more tools to the toolbox. Same thing with life. As we upgrade, more tools will be added to the toolbox. We'll get what we need, right? So I think that a lot of times we look around, and I see this a lot, and I see people thinking that, so let me go through those three things. The main one, or the first one that I mentioned in the list, is a scarcity mindset. And that is actually the belief that what we lack is the reason that we can't. So we lack it, so we can't. What we lack is the reason why we can't. But that's not always true. Second thing is, this is the one that I think is a thorn in my side that I hear about the most. It's the attribution error. That is the one that I think we are mostly dealing with when I talk to people. They are literally looking around everywhere and thinking that that person has this because they did this, or they are this because they had this. It's specifically the tendency to attribute other people's outcomes to what they have, rather than for who they are and what they do. And again, the who they are is the inside, not a title. So we literally look around and think that person had the resources, whether that's money, whether that's connections, whether that's structure, whether that's children, whether that's freedom, whether that's a husband, whether that's a wife, whether that's a house, that's why I had to preface this earlier about this is not about systematic issues. That's what I'm talking. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about mindset, right? We look and we really think that you have no idea. And this is when I bring the business part in it, and why I mentioned the business part, because I work with enough people to know that's not true. So, for instance, just yesterday, I think it was, I was with a new friend, and she was talking. She's a creative, super talented, has a business, and she's really creative. And she was saying that she lacks structure. And it's really hard for her to have structure because she's a creative. And I have worked, again, across music, TV, and film. Most of my life has been working with creators. And as much as people don't realize it, even founders of something like a tech company, a lot of times they are creative in their mind. They're strategic and they're creative thinkers. They're creative thinkers, even if they are not building something that most people would think is creative in the obvious way, like the arts. But I have hired enough people, and I've had to let go of people or transfer people or demote them or promote them because of what I thought they didn't or did have. I have hired enough people to know that's not true. I have fired enough people to know that's not true. I know enough people to know that's not true. Some people need structure because they are not structured. Some people know, let me put myself in this environment because otherwise I will be flailing. They're not naturally structured. I actually don't think most of us are. We can become disciplined enough and habitual enough to do that, but we just sort of know where we feel our weaknesses are. And I don't even like to use the word weaknesses. We know where we need a little bit of help, but we don't see it as I just think when you look at someone and you see that, I have a friend who during the pandemic, she had the opportunity to take on a lot of projects. She was making a shit ton of money, but she didn't like it because she didn't have the structure. She needed to be in an office. She needed to have that mental, if not literal, clock that you are, clocking in 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 or whatever her hours were, even if it was virtual. She needed someone to tell her what to do, by my estimation, by my talking to her about this. She needed that, and that's her comfort zone, and that's where she thrives. So she went back in-house after the pandemic, or maybe even during, and she made lesser money, but she had what she feels is a better environment for herself, right? And structure, and she just needed all of that. Someone from the outside might look at her and says, oh, she has it all together, because she has that job, and that's true in a lot of ways, but they're looking at it wrong. It wasn't the job. It wasn't going back in house at corporate America. That wasn't the resource. The resource was sourced from within. It was herself. It was knowing herself well enough to choose that. And again, she made less money. So that was also knowing her values, what she valued more, which is a big thing I also speak about, but that's for another podcast. But it was her knowing herself well enough to choose it. So, but from the outside, if you were just looking at her ultimate success, you would attribute it to so many other things because you wouldn't know that about her, and you wouldn't know how she measures success, and you wouldn't know that for her, structure is how she thrives, where someone else, when they try to force themselves into that, they don't feel comfortable. They don't thrive in environments like that. So we have to know what's for us and what's not for us, and we have to source that from within. So that's what attribution error looks like. If you are looking at someone else and you assume you know why they are where they are and the choices they had to make to get there, but mostly you think you share the same values as well. So that's another thing. And it's also self-awareness and knowing ourselves. So that's what attribution error looks like. We think, oh, this person has a husband, so they're able to do this, or this person has their wife. And on a practical level, yeah, maybe they can be more efficient on a given day. But when we attribute someone's outcome based on what we perceive are their resources, then that is what attribution error looks like. And we're not really giving them credit for what they do or who they are. Because there are two people who can have the same situation, a family situation, be a parent, and same situation, same 2 kids, house, dog, car. And one person may feel like they're failing at it, and the other person may think that they're not, and they're thriving, and they're the best mom and wife ever, or best husband and father ever. That's an internal job. So that's what attribution error looks like. And the third thing that I was talking about is the victim. So I feel like it was a victimhood. I can't name, I just know how it feels when I hear people talking to me about it. And to me, it feels part victimhood. And I could certainly be one of these people. I didn't have a lot. Everything I've created for myself. But it's this idea of, so it feels like victimhood, even they're not trying to be. It's like this subtle undercurrent that, I don't know, for me it feels like victimhood, but it's also in a way a superiority thing. And I think ultimately, though, it's a martyr complex. I did this with so little. Look at what I've had to overcome. And it's not loud, and they're not trying to be obnoxious on purpose, but it's this weird contradiction, and it's a strange thing. And I think at the end of the day, all of these things that I just named, we're arguing for our limitations. We're arguing for our limitations, like scarcity mindset, attribution error, martyr complex. Who cares? Who cares what anybody else has? Who cares what we didn't have before? We get what we need when we need it, like the toolbox. And we will find the tool, or we will grow the skill if it's important enough for us at the time that it's needed. We didn't need it before this moment. If I had an apartment, I didn't need what I would need for a house in my toolbox. If I'm driving a Porsche, I don't have tools for a Range Rover. If I'm driving a Toyota, I don't have tools for a Mercedes. You know what I'm saying? So we can't beat ourselves up, and we can't do this martyr thing when we get to that place when we now recognize it's a growth moment. This is a moment where growth can start to happen. And maybe we've planted the seed, but we don't see the flower yet or the plant. So we start to just play with ourselves and say all these things like, well, I didn't have that, so that's why it's taking me so long to do this. None of that is important. None of that matters. And I think we really have to stop making an entire identity. I think it would behoove us to stop using our circumstances as our identity, both as an excuse and a badge. This is a thorn in my side. And normally when things are thorn in my side like this, it probably means that I do this in ways that I'm not aware of. So I'm going to make sure that I pay attention to myself when I do this. I know I do it for fact. Like, I do more the scarcity mindset thing. I think what I do is more of a scarcity mindset. I more am like, if I had $2 million and I could hire 10 people, my business would be off the ground. And maybe that's true, and maybe it isn't. And maybe I don't need any of that. Maybe it's just my scarcity mindset telling me that because I lack this, I can't do that. But I didn't need that until now, because I didn't have the kind of business I had until now. I have developed so many new things that it now requires new things. So if I act like I should have had this by now, that's doing me a disservice, and that's beating myself up, and it doesn't make me feel good. And it's, you know, I don't know what that is, but I think it would really behoove us to stop making an identity out of our circumstances, because we are not behind because we don't have. I think that's the last thing. I think at the end of the day, we have to realize that we're not behind because of what we don't have. It does us no good to do any of those things that I talked about, especially that middle one, the attribution error. What does anyone else's, what they're doing have to do with you? That one I really don't get. I don't get how saying this person is more that, or I don't know what people are comparing. Maybe that's a comparison thing. But so this comparison and this contrasting thing, I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if that's a competitive thing. I don't know if that's a trauma thing. But I do know that it's probably largely because of social media. We look and we think that this person has this because they did this, because they were offered this, because it was easier for them, because they were prettier than us. And again, all of this stuff might be true on some level, going back to what I said at the beginning. It's not about privilege and all this stuff. I'm just talking about the internal stuff, assuming that we are all same playing field here. And I think that's a grave error. I really do. And it just keeps us stuck. It holds no value, even if it was all true. So if I never had this thing, why am I saying, I don't get what people are comparing themselves to. And I can tell you as a marketer, this is why there's no such thing as cookie cutter marketing. And this is when I bring it back to business. And this is why I referenced all the companies I've worked with, because I've worked with enough of them to know that you just don't know. If you're a new person and you are a solopreneur or a creator and you're trying to do a YouTube channel and you're looking at this person's YouTube channel and you think, oh, mine could be exactly like this, because you're looking from the outside thinking you don't know what they did. You have no idea what they're working with. And you know that too, which is why you think when yours is not successful in the same way, they had all of these things and that's why. But you have no idea of the internal part. Yes, it's true from a marketing standpoint. I'm always like, yeah, you can look at people's Instagram for inspiration. You can look at people's social media and say, what are they doing right that I really like? But you have no clue what those people are working with from a resource standpoint, external for sure. And that's usually what you're pointing to and saying, this is why I can't do it like them. But mostly internal, what they working with internal to help them keep going. All things considered. So I think at the end of the day, we have to really stop ourselves and question it, catch it and question it. Every time we hear ourselves saying, if only I had, or because I don't have, or everyone else has, just stop. We have to just stop and ask ourselves, is that really true? Does it really matter at this moment? Or is that just a story? And what can we do right now? And maybe this goes back to my last episode with rewriting. This is when we need to stop ourselves and rewrite a new story. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Let's just catch it. If we want to journal about it, connect it back to rewriting, like I said, write down the thing we think we can't do or we can't have. Then write down every resource, every trait, every experience that we already have had that relates to it. And that in the past reminds us that we have gotten through something similar when we transition to the next level. So it may not be the exact thing we're dealing with now, but there has been a moment in time when we have traversed and succeeded when we thought we didn't have the resources. And now here we stand on new ground. So every time we level up, or even if it's not a leveling up, if we're just walking forward and it's just an even field, we know that we just got past what was back there. I think we can write it down, maybe. We can think about all the times that we did something new that we thought we weren't equipped for, but we did it, whether it's being a mom for the first time. Any mother will tell you, usually the second time is easier. The more kids you have, the more adept you get, right? Even people who have been married multiple times. The first marriage was one thing. The second marriage, they want to do better. Or jobs, So we have all been in situations where we didn't feel quite equipped the first time, or we didn't know what we were doing, but we somehow learned it. We became masters at it, and we were able to do the next thing, and we were able to do that again. So that's all I wanted to say with this one, and I hope it resonates. Everybody thinks the grass is greener over there. Someone else, there was some miracle over there. Nobody got the miracle. I believe that most people, again, not talking about the privilege and all the things I talked about in the beginning, most people, we just use what we have to make something happen. And we have to stop always looking to see what other people are doing and stop arguing for our limitations and thinking we can't do this because of this. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening. If you are interested in journeying with me a little bit further or a little bit longer, there are a few ways that you can do that. One of the ways is my leadership course. It is called Feminine Leadership, Leading from the Inside Out. It is a mini course. It is self-guided. It is soft. It is gentle. It is easy. You can do it anywhere. It's a PDF. You can download it. It is not the traditional leadership language mumbo jumbo. It's not heavy hitting. It's not heavy, it's not heady, and it's easy to download, and it's on Gumroad. So wherever you are listening to this podcast, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Podcasts, wherever you are, in every episode you will see an episode description. Beneath the description, down below, but before you get to my bio, which is all the way at the bottom, between those two areas, you will see a bunch of links. Amongst those links is the link for Feminine Leadership, Leading from the Inside Out. You can click there. It will take you to Gumroad, and you can download it right now. It's priced at $37. Quick and simple, easy, breezy. If you're interested, check it out. I also have a book, Awaken the Brand by Suhaila, Unleash Your Personal Potential Through Building Your Brand. I like to say this book is personal development meets brand development, powered by spiritual intelligence. So whether you have an actual business brand or just a personal brand that's also a business, or just a personal brand that's just you, I define a brand as a promise. So whatever that is for you, it does not have to be a business that is a business where you are generating money or trying to generate money. It's just about how we show up in the world through our businesses, through our brand. I'm really using brand as a path to higher consciousness. That's really what it is. I'm using business and brand as a path to higher consciousness. I use that word because it's something that everybody understands, but it really literally is also a business and brand book. So however you want to look at it, however you're approaching it, whether it's for yourself personal, whether it's for yourself because you actually have a personal brand like you're a public speaker, or whether you're a thought leader and you actually are building a personal brand, or that is your business, or whether you have an actual product service brand. It's for everybody. So you can also check that down below. I have another course. It's also called Awaken the Brand. It's what the book came from. The course came first, the book came second. So you can check that out below. That's on Teachable and Gumroad as well. And then I have a newsletter called Spark by Suhaila, and it is on Substack. Those are all of my offerings. If you're interested in any of them, you will find them below. Have a wonderful day. Sending you light and love.